Hi, I'm Yarlin.
And I'm Katie.
And this is Fan Fables, a podcast hosted by two mental health counselors who take a psych deep dive into your favorite fantasy and romantasy books. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into part 2 of Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas.
Yes, and before we do that, we want to make sure that we give you some disclaimers and spoiler warnings. First and foremost, please note this episode contains spoilers for all of the books in the Throne of Glass series. That includes Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows, Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, and Kingdom of Ash. We are here, y'all.
Yes.
And it should be noted that several potentially triggering emotional and or traumatic themes may be discussed, which could be impactful or upsetting. Also, note that we use adult language and themes in our discussions of these books. So please take care of yourself and use caution if you're not in a space to engage with these conversations. Furthermore, this podcast is hosted by two licensed mental health counselors, but it should not be used to diagnose, treat, or address any individual mental health concerns or conditions. The knowledge, opinions, and experiences that we express related to mental health are our own and should not be applied as treatment. This is just for fun. So, if you feel like you need mental health treatment, please seek out your own individualized mental health care. And then our order of events. We have first up our rankings and ratings where we rate our thoughts on the book. Then we have our plots and thoughts analysis where I'll be taking us through the events of the book itself while Yarlin will guide us in better understanding the psychology of the characters. We have our teehee moments, which is just anytime we feel a flutter or are Twitter-pated by what's going on. And our therapy deep dive, where Yarlin's going to help us expand into deeper character concepts and the real world context based on what we see in the book. Finally, we have usually our future thoughts and theories, but we are at the end of this series. Yeah. So there's no future thoughts and theories, but what we do have is a little look into what's coming up for Fan Fables. So if you want to know some exciting stuff that's going to be occurring for us, some shifts and changes that we're making, stick around and stay tuned because we're going to go over those here at the end of the episode. Yarlin, are you ready to get into this?
I'm ready. We're ready to put a bow on the Throne of Glass series.
Oh, yeah. And it's a big bow because these books are big. They're yeah. We need a lot of ribbon for the bow that we're going to be putting on this series. Yeah. Do you want to start with your rankings and ratings?
Yes. So my star rating for Kingdom of Ash was 4 stars. The series overall, I do give it a 5-star. There were things about Kingdom of Ash that I didn't like, moments where I felt like a little boring, a little drawn out. It is a really long book, and there were moments where I was like, a lot of this is just like the same back and forth stuff. But have I already started thinking about rereading the series? Yes. I've already, I think I needed some, once you finish a book as heavy as this one or a series, you look back and you're just like, wow, like there were so many of these moments that I remember and I would love to revisit again. So I think it's a 5-star series. I would recommend it to all. I do think that we just have books in the series that we didn't like as much, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And I have found personally doing rereads, every time I reread it, I like it more. Right. So I don't know what that says, but it's, I think I would rate things higher now than I would have the first time around. So if you hit that reread stride, you got to let me know.
Yeah. So hopefully that'll happen. I did give it a 1 chili pepper. I didn't think there was like anything too crazy going on. But that was my rating. What about yours?
There you go. So it's going to be really shocking, but I gave this 5 stars. It made me cry again, even though I knew it was going to happen. It got to me. I like it. It just, this series is so near and dear to my heart that it was a very emotional journey, especially at the end. For me to, it's every time I finish it, it feels a little bit like grief, like letting these characters go. And when you're so steeped in the world. We've been steeped in Throne of Glass for months.
Yeah, I
And
was just gonna
so
say, like, we've been with these characters for a long time. So I think that's almost what I experienced a little bit when I finished the book. I was like, is this the grief of like, wow, what everything that we were just a part of and now moving on into a different world. I'm kind of sad.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I'm like, I'm saying goodbye. So I definitely did have a late night cry sesh as we got to the end of the book here. And it like it's just I love this series so much. So 5 stars for me. I don't know what's going on with me, but I gave it 2 chili peppers. And the reason is I think it's not because the spiciness is super descriptive. Like it's not like they're going into depth. It's mostly fantasy with like a bit of spice included. And there are multiple scenes with multiple different couples. So I was like, I'll throw you a bone. And I could be convinced to a 1 chili pepper. Like if I could rate it, like it'd probably be like a 1.5, and I tipped it into 2.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised that you gave it a 2, but
yeah,
it's okay.
I don't know what was happening in my brain when I wrote that too. You know,
You were too emotionally,
I was dysregulated. I was like, I don't know what's happening.
You weren't your normal self.
Yes. Also, I've been I think at the time I was finishing Kingdom of Ash, I was also reading like books that were not spicy at all. I find that impacts my chili pepper rating. Like when I'm reading something really spicy, I'll be like, well, this ain't nothing. If I'm reading something that has no spice at all, and then I'm reading something that has a little bit, it like impacts the way I see spice, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember what you were reading that didn't have enough spice?
I think maybe okay. So I'm in a book club with a group of my friends, and I think it was the book Never Let Me Go, or it by Kazuo Ishiguro, or it was maybe Never Let Me Go, which I was not a fan of that book.
I was just gonna say, wasn't that one that you rated really low?
No, I did not. I gave that book a 1-star rating. And I could, I don't delve into the 1 stars. And I know it's a hot take because there's lots of people who absolutely love that book, who love the movie, who find it artful. I could go into depth. I won't, but I could on why I rated it so low. So I think I was just I was so elated by the Kingdom of Ash experience that maybe it inflated those chili peppers. Anyway, so those are our rankings, our ratings. And now it is time for our plots and our thoughts. Are you ready, Yarlin?
I'm ready.
Let's get into it. So, as always, Sarah J. Maas likes to stymie me with like 15 different perspectives, which is like the bane of my plot review existence. So we're going to go through 2 different plot lines that end up getting submerged with Aylin's plot line, and then we're going to end with Aylin's because hers spans the entire book and like end caps the book. We're going to start with Dorian, and I'll get into where he is in a moment. And then I think I named them like team getting their asses kicked or something last time. It's Adi and Lysandra, the bulk of Aylin's army, which is like Galen and Ansel of Briarcliff and a whole bunch of people who are just like getting smacked around by Morath. And then I'll end with Aylin's perspective. And along the way, like Dorian and team getting their asses kicked, they get absorbed into Aylin's timeline, I guess. So we'll start with Dorian. Dorian, if you remember, at the end of the first half, he had just like figured out his full shifting abilities, proven it to Manon. They had a beautiful lovemaking scene. And then he was like, on to Morath to like get the 3rd word key. So he flies toward Morath as a hawk, and he buries 2 word keys that he's already carrying 10 miles from Morath itself. Smart. He doesn't even mark where he put it. He was like, I don't want anybody to be looking at this at all. And then he flies the rest of the way and slips into the compound, first as a crow, because there's crows flying around Morath, then as a little mouse.
I thought that was cute.
Oh my God. The thought of Dorian as a mouse in my pocket, just like being a little, like squeaking and being a little cutie. I was like, I love that. Yeah. And he heads to Erewhon's quarters because he can sense the word key. He's like, I like smell it. I sense it. It's somewhere nearby. And he's hidden sort of in a shadow in a corner of the room. And who should walk in to Erewhon's quarters but one Maeve, who everyone thought was a fae, but now we know is a Valg. Mm-hmm. This is bad news. And first Dorian panics that like somehow Maeve brought Aelin to Erewhon, which would be big bad. But he soon figures out that Maeve doesn't have Aelin with her. She is there to ask Erewhon if she can join him in his army. And as he greets his brothers Orcus and Mantix into Aurelia. If you remember, Maeve was married to Orcus. And so this is a complex moment because up till this point, she's been trying to hide from Orcus, Mantix, and Erewhon. And now she's making a 180. Yeah. And he's not really inclined to work with her because he's offering her way more than she's offering him. He's got like the mass of the army that he's been building for 20 years or whatever it is. And she's like, and there's me. And her armies at Doranel turned against her. She no longer holds Doranel as queen of that territory. So in order to get him to work with her, she offers 6 of her Karin Kui, which from the first half of the book and in Tower of Dawn, we learn that the Karin Kui are the ladies' maids of Maeve, and they've been protecting her, protecting the Word Gate. They've been protecting a lot for her. So she offers 6 of them as vessels for 6 Valg princesses. And this is enticing because apparently the princesses are even more cruel and even more violent than the princes. And there was a part of me that was like, okay, matriarch. And then there was a part of me that was like, but also you're bad. Yeah. So I was confused there a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So Erewhon says he'll think about it and go, is like, you have some rooms in Morath, go to them. Dorian follows her in mouse form. He thinks he's being so sneaky. But she knew who he was the moment he like snuck into the room as a mouse. And she catches him and is like, what up, Dorian? I see you. And Dorian, being caught, is like, well, this mouse form isn't serving me anymore. So he turns back into himself. And he offers Maeve a really interesting deal that they'll work together to get the 3rd word key, and he will marry her so that they can rule Adarlan together. And what's so interesting about this is he has to be super careful because what we know later, what the reader doesn't know at the start of this conversation, but we find out later, he's tricking her. He has no intentions of marrying her.
I was like, what is he doing right now? I was so confused when I was reading this part. I was like, wait, what is going on? Is he turning bad?
The first time I read it, I was like, Dorian, how fucking dare you? I was so mad at Dorian. I was like, what are we doing right now? What is this? I thought it was going to go in a totally different direction. He was going to be bad for a little bit. And that's, I think, purposeful. I think Sarah J. Maas is like taking us for a ride a little bit. And so he has to be really careful. And he is very careful to make his offer seem genuine because she has these terrible mind-probing powers, this dark mind magic that she attempts to use on him so that she could see if he's telling the truth. And he manages to keep her out and to make her believe like she has successfully probed his mind. He does this thing where he keeps a section of his mind open to her so that she feels like she's getting the truth, but she's not really. Ultimately, she agrees to the union. I mean, what the hell does she have to lose? She doesn't have an army anymore. She doesn't have a country anymore. And they decide to work together to get the 3rd word key, which they are both after for different reasons, but they're both after it. And Dorian does a really good job of playing his part, that he's like bitter toward Aelin. He's like, I'm so sick of playing second fiddle to Aelin.
Yeah, I was definitely very confused by him, and I honestly thought I missed something. I was like rereading this section a little bit. I was like, what is going on? What did I miss something?
You're like, Dorian, babe, where have we gone astray?
Yeah.
So Dorian and Maeve start working together, and he shifts into various creatures that's sort of running all over the place. But he briefly does like a little mini side quest, and he shifts into the form of Vernon Locken, who's Alid's uncle. And he wants to ask Erewhon what basically about his father. And in the midst of asking him these questions, he notices that Erewhon has eyes like Manon's, which makes a lot of sense because witches are the union between Valg and Fae. But I think it just underlines the fact that Manon has a lot of Valg in her, that her golden eyes are like showing her Valgness. Dorian asks about his father, what he was like, and Erewhon admits that Dorian's father never totally submitted to him, that he tried many ways to get Dorian's dad to submit, and he never totally did. And I think this changes a little bit what Dorian thinks of his father, and it sort of takes some of the anger out of it, because he was furious. Even he like murdered his dad in full fury, not believing his dad when his dad was like, I did my best. Like Dorian was not with it. He was like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty crazy to find out.
So after he gets some answers, Maeve and Dorian bring together their schemes about the third word key. Dorian scouts for a week trying to figure out where it is. And he knows that it's in Erewhon's quarters, but not where. He's like, this bedroom is not that big, but I can't sort out where it is. And he's also exploring all over the keep. And Maeve and the reader, so this is another time we get tricked a little bit, think that he's just kind of going around the castle looking for the key. But we found out later that he is sewing ice and like cracks into the foundation of Morath everywhere he goes. He's basically creating a web of his power that's insinuated into the stones of Morath so that he can destroy it. Crazy amounts of magic, in my humble opinion. But we don't know this. He just seems like he's sort of running around. Maeve also tries to get the third word key, but by seducing Erewhon. First looking like herself, dressed in like a little skimpy gown.
Yeah.
And then shifting into Aelin's form, and she's like, would you like me better if I were Aelin? And Erewhon's like, nah, not like he wants to sort of like control Aelin, but it's clear he's not attracted to Aelin. And then she shifts into Manon's form, and it's clear that he's attracted to Manon. But in the end, he says, I won't betray my brother, and you are my brother's wife. And she's like, weird time to have honor, given that you're murdering an entire realm, but okay.
This is where he doesn't cross the line, you know.
Yeah, like boundary. he'll like possess people and use them and subjugate them and murder them en masse, but like not my brother's wife.
No.
I don't know where his compass is pointing, but it ain't north, let me tell you what. And she tells him that she will open a portal briefly between this world and their old world so that Erewhon can see Orcus and Mantix. She can't bring Orcus and Mantix into this world. She's not powerful enough for that. But what she can do, or what she tells him she can do, is open a portal enough so that he can see them. And I wanted to stop here for a moment because I think this time where Dorian and Maeve are working together, it includes a lot of things about the word keys and Erewhon and stuff, but it also includes more insights about Maeve's world than we've seen thus far. And this is something I didn't track as much in my first two reads. It really was highlighted in my third read. And it's clear kind of through her reactions to things that she does not harbor any love for Erewhon, that there's disgust there, maybe even fear of Erewhon and his brothers. And she talks about how painful and depraved her home world was. So I'm curious for you, Yarlin, how does understanding more of Maeve's perspective help us understand her as a character and her psychology?
Yeah, I mean, I think during these scenes of between her and Dorian, I was very like shocked that first that he was open to working with her or at least making it seem that way. So as the reader, it was really shocking on like where that was going. Um and I think with finding out some of those like Maeve's truths, which, we don't know if she's fully telling the truth, but maybe she is. I it had me have more empathy for her, where I was starting to feel bad for kind of like what she experienced or what she said she experienced and like how her world was. But obviously, she still did horrible things. So that immediately was like, well, she still sucks. Um, I kind of wish there was like a character arc that she was able to turn good and help them all while
Mm,
she still escapes the brothers and helps get rid of Erewhon. Maybe that would have made for some interesting teamwork.
mm.
Um, but ultimately that's not what happened. But I think it was a little bit of a shift in understanding like why she did a little bit of what she did.
Yeah. I almost like, as I was thinking about what it would do to me if I grew up in a world that only knew cruelty and violence, like I
Right.
almost see, or I wondered what um like parallels existed actually between Maeve and Manon. Because
Mm,
Manon, by
that's
her
true.
eye color, is more Valg than Faye, but she has an opportunity through her relationship with Astrid and the 13 and Abraxas to learn tenderness and kindness and love. Maeve existed for a long time and grew up in great cruelty to the point where I wonder if there could ever be an arc for her. And at
Right.
the same time, her disgust of their world and her fear of them, it's almost like there's this crack that's opened up that's like, maybe there's a world where she could be less evil than she is, but it never gets to come to fruition because this is the context she was sort of brought in. And then I think about the fact that she's been in Aurelia for hundreds of years and hasn't learned a fucking thing about
Yeah.
kindness, or you know what I mean? It's like there was two sides of me where I was like,
Yeah.
I wanted to like pull empathy for her, and then I was like, but you've had plenty of opportunities to like interact with this world, Aurelia, outside of your
Mhm.
cruel world, and you only brought cruelty
I
to
think
this world.
also because she had to rule and she
Mm,
probably didn't have many like any friends, so she was isolated in a world where she wasn't in like her, horrible world, but she still
mm,
had to, put on this front of like being evil and like having these people in her court or whatever.
mm,
So I don't think there was any room for vulnerability. She was
yeah.
just in a better environment, maybe. She was more in
Mm.
control. But I don't think she had the opportunity to even practice, having close relationships. It's like everyone has like a blood bond to her and,
Hmm.
so
Well, and she even says at one point, and I forget what she's referring to, but someone asks her, like, "Did you ever love them?" Maybe it was the car and Cooey. Like, did you ever feel love? And she says, like, "I loved them in as much as I'm able to love anything." So I
mhm,
think she recognizes, like, whatever her version of love is, it's in some ways like stunted and controlling. Like, I think she doesn't understand how to properly love, and
yeah.
I don't think she ever figures it out. Like, I don't think it matters what context she has with Dorian or anybody else. She never gets to that point.
Mhm. And it could be because like Valg are probably unable to do that. They don't have the
Maybe.
capacity to do that.
Yeah.
With Manon, she's not full Valk, so she's able to have some elements of changing. But
Mhm.
Maeve is she's Valk, so she's evil
Mhm.
all within.
Yeah. And that's, I think, ultimately, and you see this play out in the way it plays out between Dorian and Maeve. Like there's this sort of glimmer of like something that could be different, but she reverts back to
Yeah.
herself in the end. So they're scheming, and while they're in the midst of their schemes, Maeve is sort of working to distract Erewhon, so that Dorian can go into Erewhon's chamber and find the word key. And Dorian takes Erewhon's form. He shifts into Erewhon's likeness and gets past the guards because he's like, "Let me in. I'm Erewhon." And they're like, "Yes, Sir Erewhon." And he finds the key, but he finds it in the arm of a girl that Erewhon has trapped in his bed. This was so insidious to me. I was just like, this hurts my heart. That like it's pretty clear that Caltaine was just replaced by another girl who in a gross fashion looks kind of like Caltaine. It's like he has a type of woman that he wants to abuse for this purpose. And Dorian is horrified.
Yeah.
He knows he has to get the key out. And so he takes the key out of her arm and is using his healing magic to help heal her arm. And the healing magic he has pushes the valve back a little bit in her mind. And when she gets a little bit of control of her mind and body, she's begging him to kill her. She's like, "Just kill me, just kill me, just kill me." And he's trying to decide what to do about that. He doesn't want to kill her, and he's trying to decide what kind of king he wants to be. Like, it's a really philosophical moment for him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's made, the debate in his own head is made moot when Maeve walks in and snaps the neck of the young woman to save him from the decision. And that's how she sort of posits it to him. She's like, "I'm saving you from having to make a decision about this."
Yeah. And I also thought that if he were to kill her, like, things can kind of go wrong while he's there and people can find out that like, oh my gosh, there's someone here and whatever. So I definitely was like on the edge of my seat of like what was gonna happen. It was definitely a sad little moment there.
Yeah, so intense. And so Maeve's like, "All right, I saved you from that decision." And this is like Maeve's true self. Like, you think there's a glimmer of like empathy for her. And as soon as he's got the word key, she tries to trap his mind and get him to give her the word key. But what's interesting is Dorian sets a trap within a trap. He's been waiting for her. He's like, "Bitch, I know you. And at some point, you're going to try to fuck with me. You're going to try to take over my mind." And so when she mentally attacks him, he has this place open for her in his mind. She attacks him, and then he traps her. He sinks his mental claws into her and holds her there and is like, "I knew that you were going to do this. And not today, not ever. I'm never going to be a slave to anybody." And so he holds her mind and her world walking abilities with his magic. So she can't retaliate and she can't teleport anywhere. He grabs the third word key, shifts into a bird. Mind you, while he's holding Maeve, he's holding on to Maeve. Yeah, he's magically doing something so incredible and intense. He's holding her with his mind. He's getting the word keys. He's shifting. And he flies away from Morath. And when he's far enough away, he unleashes all of the magic that he's been storing in the stones of Morath, and he crushes the towers of Morath, and then he lets go of his control of Maeve. He's like, and he takes her transporting power with him. He's like, "No longer will you teleport through my world like a little fucking sneaky sneak. You're going to have to walk it out like the rest of us." And so he takes that and he flies away, and he goes to get the other two keys that he has hidden. And now he has all three word keys, and he immediately feels how much of a burden it is. Like it's like pressing on him, the holding of these word keys. He flies for 2 days straight, and he crashes in wyvern form into Oakwald Forest. And he summons Gavin one last time and says, "Listen, I have the word keys. it's time to say goodbye to Elena. Once this gate is closed, you will never see her again. So say your goodbyes, do what you have to. She's going to be gone. And then he flies north with some iron teeth and wyverns, like he's hiding among them, to see if he can intercept Aelin, and to see if she's figured out another way to close these gates without sacrificing either of them. We will find out whether that happens or not in Aelin's perspective. So we leave Dorian for now, but what did you think about Dorian's whole adventure in Morath?
I thought it was so interesting that he was even capable of doing that all on his own. He showed like little to no fear to even tackle that on. So it just showed the impact of like how much magic he has and how he has grown to, kind of tackle that on. I do wish he would have had like other people around him, or I don't know. He's capable of doing so much. So, that kind of has you thinking about the end. But yeah, I was really like surprised. So I'll leave my thoughts there.
Yeah. It's almost like his powers are finally out in full force. Like you see time and time again, like even when he's with the witches, like a point is made a couple of times where he's like, I could just fucking kill everyone here, like without blinking. I just could decimate you all. And it's said and it's referenced, but you never really see, like he never does fully what he could do with his powers. Yeah. This was him like showing, and he didn't even like, it wasn't like he was close to burnout. He didn't say like, oh, I'm getting to the dregs of my powers. Like
he was fine.
Fully controlled Maeve, who's one of the most powerful Valg. No one else has been able to control her.
Right.
Destroyed Morath, shifted, and held the word keys. Like scary amount of power. And to your point, like with great power can come great responsibility and corruption. So like, we really looking at that. So that's Dorian. Zoom to the other side of the world, to not really to the other side of the world, but to Orinth, which is in Terrasen. And we have team getting their asses kicked, which is Adian, Lysandra, Darrow, Gallon, Ansel, Noxo, Evangeline, eventually Rolf, everybody who Aelin has amassed over these 8 books to kick ass against Morath. They're all together. And Rolf has just helped them to retreat into Orinth. If you remember at the end of the first half, they were about to get decimated by Morath on the banks of the Florine River. But Rolf came in with his fire lances, did a little distraction magic, and then they all withdrew into Orinth. And Darrow and the Lords of Orinth chastise Adian and friends for going south when they were commanded to go north. It really, like, they already knew, like, Adian already was feeling guilty and, like, and in his mind, how badly he had fucked up. And also in my mind, how badly he fucks up on the regular. I'll get into it later, but Adian pisses me off. And because they've spent the last several battles trying to hold off against Morath and just getting their asses kicked, there is such an air of hopelessness. And I want to recognize, like, to me, there's so many difficult things happening in so many places, like Aelin's capture, all these things. The one that feels the heaviest, that feels the most, like, unendingly bleak is this perspective. And they're constantly fighting between trying to rally people to their cause and hopelessness and defeat. So I think it's important to pause and recognize how much hopelessness is a part of this narrative, this particular part of the narrative. And granted, the circumstances of this story are out of the ordinary. Most of us aren't battling a supernatural intergalactic army. And I, I don't know anybody that's doing that, but maybe you have a client who is. And the emotion hopelessness is very real. And I think it's something that I've seen a lot of clients deal with. So, how do you see hopelessness show up in clinical spaces? And how can folks address it and build hope without, like, I feel like so many people be like, oh, we'll just feel better. Like, and it's like, yeah, I would totally do that if I could. So, how do you address this in the clinical space?
Yeah, I mean, I think restoring hope in individuals is a really difficult thing, especially in like the world that we live in, where we always have access to all the horrible things going on in the world and a lot of negativity, which continues to support like the lack of hope and, you know, a lack of like being able to change things. So building hope, I feel like can start with reframing some of those negative thoughts or irrational thoughts and using like checking the facts of like, okay, if someone is, let me think, if someone is not hopeful that they can ever make a good friend, they've been kind of like treated badly in previous friendships, and then they have this idea of like, well, no one's gonna treat me well or no one's gonna be a good friend. I think a lot of times we can try to reframe that, and be able to have an open mind and a way where we can not just add our negative experiences from our past and think that that's always going to happen. So I think that's something that can help. Positive affirmations are helpful, and maintaining the focus of like our circle of control, what we can have control over, and the power that we have of changing certain things. Or, I think that is how we can be able to at least feel like there are things that are in our possibility of change and not everything is just out of our hands. So I think that can help reinstate some hope. And I think socially there are other like factors that can diminish hope, like if individuals have like economic or social barriers. So I think it's very complex and it is really difficult. I think ultimately just holding space for those individuals and have them process what they go through in life. Because a lot of times maybe they don't have someone to talk about the things that they go through, and it feels like it's weighing down on them. So I think it's one that it's difficult. It's a difficult job to do, to help them, restore hope. Because if we don't have hope, then what do we have? We don't have a will to live. And then, that's another realm of individuals who have suicidal ideation. And, it's hard too.
Yeah. I like that you bring up reframing as a part of this, because I like reframing because it doesn't ignore the reality. Like, yeah, if you've been hurt by past friendships, that's real. And I think it gives us an opportunity to separate out what's actually happened, like what do we have evidence for, from what's our feeling about it. So the example that you bring up, being able to delineate between, okay, I've been hurt by friendships before, and so I'm afraid of what that could mean for future friendships. That's a different statement than I could never make friends.
Right. That black and white thinking. That's what's what we try to change in clients.
Well, and recognize what we have evidence for and not. Like sometimes our brains will try to convince us of things that it's like, I don't know how much evidence I have for that. And I'm also not a future teller. And so I can't really say with accuracy that I will never make a friend. Right. I could say that I've had trouble in the past or that I've been hurt in the past. And we do things like looking for exceptions. Like, was there a time that someone was ever kind to you, or you did have a connection with, or what do you think you bring to the table in a friendship? Like giving us a little bit more of a balanced view of an issue that's not so predicated on this is always how it will be, or it will never go right. So I love that you bring that to the space, because I think in some ways that's how Adian and friends keep it together. Like it's very bleak. It is very bleak over there.
Yeah.
And they take multiple opportunities to say, like, we are against it. We might not live to see the morning, and there are folks counting on us, and like pulling from the dregs of the hope and strength that they have to defend their home. Like when they go back to their values, it always leads them to defending their home.
Yeah. So I think that's ultimately like the biggest way of them having kind of a drive is like everything that's on their shoulders and ultimately their home at stake. So I think that can make to amp up like, okay, we got to just get through this and do this.
Absolutely. So they are holding down the fort, or they are trying. And to Darrow's credit, I don't like Darrow much overall, but to Darrow's credit, he does a few things in this second half of the book that I find commendable. One is that they've at least prepared Orinth as best as they could for a siege. They've been working for months and months to make sure that Orinth can withstand a siege. And in that vein, they prepare as much as they can, and they wait for Morath to advance. And as much as I hate on Adian, because I will be so quick to hate on Adian, he does have skills in battle strategy. He's very smart about using the resources that they have. They don't have as much in the way of resources as Morath, but they do have opportunities to use their skill and their acumen to their advantage. One way they do this is Adian, Lysandra, Ren, and the Silent Assassins use some trickery with some pits and explosions and things. We're not going to get into how they did it, but they take out 2 of 3 witch towers. From the first half, if you remember, a witch tower is this like big obsidian tower that witches, Iron Teeth witches, use to concentrate the power that comes out of the yielding. The yielding is a kind of magic. It's the only magic that witches can really show is in their death. When they yield, there's this big blast of magic. And essentially what the witch towers do is they focus that blast of magic to destroy things. And it is very powerful, and it just decimates everything. Like, in the first half, they pointed a witch tower at a flank of people. It's like 4,000 soldiers. The blast just wipes them out in a moment. Like, 1 second they're there, the next they're not. Yeah, it is crazy. And so they take out 2 of the witch towers that Erewhon has, but there is 1 left intact because basically an explosion didn't happen at the right time. Despite the victory with the towers, and so Morath sort of pulls back the 3rd tower because it got sort of broken a little bit, but not totally decimated. So they have a victory with the witch towers, but they're still all sitting in Orinth shitting themselves because all Morath has to do is pull the 3rd witch tower back, fix it, and bring it back to the front, and then they're done. And they are working hard to hold each other up, to help fighters remain calm. Adian works to comfort Evangeline, and Darrow, in a show of compassion that I didn't anticipate, gives Evangeline a job as his assistant running messages. And so they all sit around and are basically like, we're going to fight for as long and as hard as we can. And we'll die. Like, we will die on these battlements because we're not giving it up, but we'll probably die. And they especially feel that way because on top of the witch tower debacle, the Iron Teeth Legion rolls up, and it is dark. They are getting massacred, and it is bad. And when all seems to be lost, who should fly up over the horizon but Manon, the 13, and all of the Crokins that they have been amassing across the lands. And when they come up, and this like makes me feel emotional. Manon says, "We fight for a promise to Aelin for a better world," and it's like, like Manon in her full like compassion and all that. Oh,
I love her so much. She's my favorite character. So a lot of the reason why I'm not like super a fan of this book. It's just there's some things that just I didn't like about what happened.
Yeah. And we will make sure that you have the space to communicate your displeasure of that moment, because it is one of the hardest moments of the series. So, they roll up and they're like, we're here to serve, and we will keep the Iron Teeth legions in check. And you know what? This doesn't solve all the problems, but it's a boon for people in Orinth. It's something to hold on to. It's a reinforcement that they badly needed. In addition to some of these battle things, there are also continued interpersonal developments. And despite the fact that Adian was an absolute fucking ass in the first half of the book, he's been doing his penance to Lysandra for several weeks and declares his love for her. And in an elite move that I agreed with, Lysandra was like, I'll think about it. And I was like, that's right, girl.
Let him wait.
Yeah, let him yeah, he needs a few decades of sweating, in my opinion. But like, good on you for holding the line and being like, I don't know about it. And this is the first time that she looks like she's going to consider forgiving him. And I might not have capitulated so fast, but when everybody's about to die, everybody's about to die. It's not the time. It's not the time for grudges. It's the time for coming together or whatever. But like, Adian's stupid. So the next battle begins, and it is so bloody. It's chaotic. Everyone's at their battle stations, and there's a few people who are in like specific places that sort of set the scene. Lysandra is on the river of Morath's eastern flank as a river dragon. So she's snaking through the river. She jumps out of the river. Chomp, chomp, chomp. Goes back to the river. She jumps out of the river again. Splashes her tail. Fucks up some people. Gets back in the river. And she's sneak attacking and killing from that angle. Manon and her witches are flying in the skies, fighting the Iron Teeth. Evangeline scampering up and down frozen staircases, doing messages. Adian, Ren, the Bay, and the Mycenians, everyone else, they're on the battlements and trying to keep Morath off of the walls, off the battlements. And Adian fights a Valg prince, because there's like the Valg grunts who kind of are mindless and just want to kill. Then there's the princes who have like extra power, whatever. A prince comes over the wall. Adian's like, this cannot stand. And he vanquishes the Valg prince, but Adian is gravely injured and passes out. So he gets pulled off the battlements. And Morath figures out that Lysandra got to the river through a tunnel that's running under Orinth. It's a great place for Lysandra to sneak attack, but Morath puts 2 and 2 together. They're like, how did that dragon get? Oh. And so Erewhon's forces start trying to get in through that tunnel. And Adian signals for Manon and the 13 to return to the battlements, and they do it. He's like they're fighting in the skies. He's like, wee woo. We're about to get fucking like an insurgence through these tunnels. Iskra and her wyvern come out of nowhere and attack Manon, and he bites into Abraxas's neck deeply. Yeah. And it feels for a second like Abraxas might die.
Very emotional moment.
Oh my God. First time I read that, I was like, if this fucking dragon dies, I'm gonna lose my shit. I'm gonna just I was ready to be very upset the first time I read this. It still was upsetting the third time. But who should come to Manon's rescue but Petra Blueblood and a bunch of rebel Iron Teeth who have turned sides and are now working for Aelin. They come to the rescue, and Iskra and her wyvern die as a result of this clash with Petra. And Abraxas, Manon, and the 13 help blockade the entrance that Lysandra is protecting. The entrance is secured, and Manon and Abraxas barely make it back to the battlements because he's losing blood this whole time. And he's fighting as best he can, but he gets to a point where he can't do it anymore. So he's badly injured, but he gets help and will survive this moment. Just as this is all occurring, Morath rolls up with the third repaired witch tower, and they realize they are about to be decimated, that it doesn't fucking matter. They're about to all die. And the 13...
Stop. This is like getting me.
Astrid goes up to Manon, says, "Live, Manon, live."
Mm-hmm.
And the 13 fly off, and Manon can't follow them because Abraxas is hurt, and they spear for the witch tower. And Manon watches as her 13 die one by one as they get closer to this tower. And then at the very end, Astrid faces off against the matron. She like rips her shirt off where the matron had carved unclean.
Mm-hmm.
She faces off against the matron, and the 13 sacrifice themselves to the yielding, and it explodes the witch tower, and they all die. The Blackbeaks, everybody in that vicinity dies, and Manon is just absolutely devastated. And it's one of the saddest moments of this entire fucking series, in my opinion.
Yeah. I know we're both like at the edge of tears right now. It was really, really sad. So yeah.
It's like it doesn't matter how many times I read it, it gets to me.
Because we know how much she like how much her 13 meant to her and everything that she had been through with them. So I think that was a really hard moment.
Yeah. I remember when we were talking in the first half, when we got to the end and it was future thoughts and theories, I was like, do you think they win or don't? And you were like, if they don't win, and Aelin, you were like, I will burn this place to the ground. And I was like, okay. And in the back of my mind, I wondered how you were going to take the death of the 13. I was like, I wondered if those deaths would turn your opinion of Kingdom of Ash, like if you were going to come back and be like 2 stars, fuck this.
Oh yeah. You know I mean, I think it definitely has something to do with why it wasn't a 5-star for me, because I just wanted more for the 13 and everything else revolving her. So definitely disappointed with that. Definitely she was my favorite.
Did not like that.
Yeah, she's my favorite character. I wanted more for her. But I see that it was like necessary.
Yeah. Well, and their sacrifice fulfills a prophecy that was made about the Witch Kingdom, which was that nothing would grow, the land would not be fertile, the land would not be viable until a debt was paid to essentially the land and the kingdom. And after this scene occurs, it cuts to a little piece of land in the wastes, which is where the Witch Kingdom was, and a flower blooms there after they make their sacrifice, and the land is returned to how it should be and is now livable. So it comes full circle for the witches. And the 13, and I don't remember if it was Astrid or somebody else, make the sentiment like, take our people home. Like,
yeah.
Oh, that's so fucking sad.
Yeah.
So I have to like get off it or I'm gonna cry. So this happens, and it's a great victory for Orinth, even though it's a great loss to Manon and to us as readers. And so Erwan's army retreats for a bit because now they don't have a witch tower. And you know, they have to like reconfigure how they're going to approach. I do want to stop for a moment, recognizing how devastating this moment was for Manon and what a source of grief it is for her. And I think even the fact that she grieves is a big deal. So what do you notice about the way that Manon grieves for her 13, and what kind of conversations do you have around grief in counseling?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as we've been talking, I think this was such a heartbreaking moment. I think for her losing her team, her sisters who were there for her even after her grandmother's cruelty and truly followed Manon, losing them, I feel like, was everything to her. And I don't know how I would live on without them if I was Manon. Ultimately, they were able to now go back to the waste and kind of be all together in a land. So I think that's something that she can kind of use her way of grieving, where it was like the ultimate sacrifice for the witches to be able to be back where they should be. In the counseling space, I feel like grief is processed depending on where the client is mentally and like what stage of grief they're in. I like to mention like the grief roller coaster as like a psychoeducation point, which is like a similar version or like image of what the stages of grief are. And I think holding space for that individual to grieve in a safe space is the most important thing. Another thing I really like is like narrative therapy. So, like writing a letter to the person that they lost of things that they wish they said, feelings. I think it's an amazing way for us to process our feelings. So, I think ultimately, like having that space for the client is how it will help them with healing. But grief is, it looks different for everyone, and it's a long journey, but that's kind of how I like to approach it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like normalizing all of it, right? Like, and I've had so many people be like, I don't know if this is weird, but I kind of feel like doing this. And it's like some way that they want to memorialize someone that they've lost, or, even a part of an identity that they've lost. So recognizing that, there are ways you can grieve that are harmful to you. Like, we certainly don't want to
use substances or anything like that.
There's ways that we need to track, like, okay, is this causing more harm than good? And there are lots of ways to grieve, and there's not a one way to do it, and there's not a timeline. And you might be grieving somebody 10 years after something has occurred. So recognizing that it's a lot about normalizing things and being like, it's okay to want to grieve like this. And giving folks the opportunity to have those cycles that, like, okay, we don't, if something happens or you lose somebody or there's grief for you, it's not like we bring it up in one session, you process it all out, now we like wash our hands of this. Like,
it can keep coming up. And because like I think of a client who like lost her husband many years ago, and it's still something that comes up because there is a lot of resentment and anger there. And it depends on like when it comes up again for a client. It could be some time that they don't really think about it, and then one day, the grief kind of comes up again and they have a difficult moment, and then we can kind of revisit that topic. So I think it's always a cycle, especially if we lose someone who we were with for a long time, who meant a lot to us. That person's not really going to truly leave us and leave our memories. So it'll definitely still come up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would guess, like, if Manon, if we looked in on Manon's process after the end of this book, that she would be continuing to deal with the grief, even as like Petra. It almost seems like Petra and Bronwyn, who's like Croken and Blue Blood, they start showing up with Manon. They kind of become her like seconds in command, I guess. And so you could already see these like burgeoning relationships. And it doesn't, I would expect a long process for Manon around processing this. And
I almost wish there was like a novella of Manon's POV and like how the witches restore the waste or what their kingdom looks like. I wish there was more for them and their story. So,
which is wild to think about, because like if you think about how long Kingdom of Ash or even the entire Throne of Glass series, I always leave wanting more. And it's like, it doesn't matter that it was thousands of pages. Like, give me more. I want more.
Yeah, I think because there's so many like impactful characters. And I mean, again, like if your favorite character was Manon and the witches, like that's why I really loved Heir of Fire. So it's like, I think when you like their characters and the witch kind of like dynamic, you want more, because this book unfortunately didn't have as much of their stuff. So maybe Sarah made like a novella and she just hasn't. It's like one that she never published.
Maybe we make a novella. Who knows?
Maybe we can.
We just
another fanfic.
Another fanfic. Just add it to the pile that we're saying that we're going to make about everything that we wanted to see happen in these books.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, in this book that we currently have, and also Sarah J. Maas, if you're listening, because I know you are, drop that novella. Drop the novella, babe. We would be so grateful.
Or
drop
just
back into our six.
Send me an email. Let me know what you thought you wanted, like Manon and the Witches and all of that.
A quick email. You don't even have to like give me any salutations. No, you don't have to be fancy with it. Just be like,
this is what I wanted to happen. But I didn't have space for another book on the series. I don't know.
We won't tell anybody, we promise. Fingies like crossed that she'll bless us with that.
I have to look on Reddit to see if people feel the same about like Manon and wanting more.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine. I haven't met a single person who's like, I really hated Manon. Like, everybody I know is like, love Manon.
I need a t-shirt of her.
Oh, there's plenty out there for you on that front. There's one I'm thinking of in particular that I think you'll really like. I'll have to send it to you later.
Okay,
it's like, all right, I'll send it to you. So we have this great loss, grieving Manon for the rest of the book. She's going about the things, she's doing what she needs to do, but it's clear she's not okay. And even amongst all the brutality and grief and death and loss, Lysandra and Adian's bond grows. They hold one another every day. They kiss in the hallways. They acknowledge their mate bond. They are apparently mates. And so it is, now why you would treat your mate the way that Adian has, that confuses me a little bit, but here we are. And so the fighting continues. Everyone's trying to keep up morale. It's really hard to do so. Murtaugh, who is Ren's father and one of the lords of Terrasen, goes to the battlements because they need reinforcements, and he dies, and losses are piling up on Aelin's forces. But some people that we know eventually do roll up. And we will get into that when we pick up on Aelin's timeline. We leave team getting their asses kicked, 13 gone, Adian and Lysandra kissing in the hallways, and us just trying to keep it together, essentially.
Honestly, whenever it's like those like POVs of Adian and like the whole crew, those were my least favorite chapters, to be honest. It was dragged on.
Yeah, I got more out of it, I think, time 3 than I have previously. I think they're the hardest to read because they feel so depressing. Like, it's just nonstop. Like,
and
they're just getting
war
shit.
Stuff is like, gets annoying after a while.
Like, enough of this war shit. It is doggedly depressing at some time, and I also don't like Adian. I end this book not liking Adian. So I mean, I empathize or I sympathize because I pull empathy or sympathy for everybody. Like, I'm trying to get in people's psychology anyway. But like, Adian has not redeemed himself in my mind. And I think Lysandra is kinder than I would be. And she's driven by dire circumstances. And I get that. Life's too short, blah, blah, blah. But like, and I'll get into like my full problems with Adian when we have the full picture, but he's my least favorite by far. Well, if Arobin was still alive, Arobin would be my least favorite
too. Yeah.
But after Arobin, Adian's my least favorite character because for
I'll
so many
agree to
reasons.
that. Yeah, I'll agree.
Yeah. And even like I also don't like Erwan and Maeve, but they are clearly the villains. Like
Right.
they are villainous. That's who they are. They're playing the part.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like in and I have issues with I want to say I have issues with J.K. Rowling. But I grew up on Harry Potter, so like how do you contend with that?
Yeah.
So I'm going to pull a reference from there, and I do not support her views. It almost feels like I almost have hotter feelings about Umbridge than I do about Voldemort, because
Oh,
Voldemort
yeah.
is straightforwardly evil. Like he is playing the part that he has
Yeah.
been designed for. It's like you are the antagonist, clearly.
Yeah. But Umbridge
Umbridge,
sucks.
she's like got that smile, that fake smile on her face. She's got
And
like,
I hate that she likes cats because
I like cats. And
exactly. I'm like this
bitch. we don't own, like we don't claim her in our in the cat circles.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like it's those characters that are like tricky, but
Yeah.
like I don't like I'm just like Adian is supposed to be a sympathetic character, and he fucking aggravates me to no end. So anyway, all of that to say, that perspective was hard to read at moments. And we do have our third and final perspective, which is Aelin and friends. And when I say Aelin and friends, I mean Aelin, Rowan, Fenris, Gavriel, Lorcan, Alid, Kale, Irene, Nezrin, Sartak, Borte, the Coggins army. Eventually, I even mean Adian and everybody, Manon and everybody, Dorian and everybody. They all get subsumed into this narrative. But we start this narrative with Aelin and friends moving into position on either side of the Farian Gap. The Iron Teeth Witches for a long time inhabited the Farian Gap, and a lot of Morath's armies were stationed in the Farian Gap. So they're after their victory at Aniel, which is where Kale's from, they're going to go to the Farian Gap and take it over as their plan. Aelin's going to come from the White Fang mountainside in the north. Nezrin, Borte, and Sartak and the Coggins army, or other half of the Coggins army, are going to come up from the other side. Also, I have found it's very tricky to talk about battle movements. I need like a map, and
yeah, we need the map reference.
I wish I could hold one up.
At.
Yeah, I wish I could hold one up for you right now and be like, see the White Fangs, they're coming this way, and then they're going that way. So anyway, along the journey to the Farian Gap, there are also continuing character and emotional developments. And this is something I think Sarah J. Maas does really well. She toggles between like the battle stuff and the like logistics of war making and the emotional dynamics that are playing out along the way. And one example, or I think a powerful example of some of the interpersonal stuff that's occurring, is a moment actually that occurs between Kale and Gavriel. Kale and Gavriel has been going through an arc sort of throughout these books, but kind of in the sidelines around his role as a father. And Kale assures Gavriel that Adian will forgive Gavriel for leaving Adian's mother. And that Kale wishes he had had a dad like Gavriel. And so when we're looking at Gavriel's arc around his relationship with Adian, he really wants to be close to Adian. And Adian has spurned him several times, kind of saying, get out of my face. Another reason that I don't like Adian. But it's curious. I thought this moment was really interesting. And I'm wondering, why do you think Kale is in a powerful position to reassure Gavriel? And then what do you see in clinical spaces related to challenging or complex parent and child relationships?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Kale, like he can offer his insight on the importance of using their valuable time to tell people what you want to say and avoid regretting not saying what you wanted to say or tell them or, express your feelings. Even with expecting the possibility of anger from Adian or like not much happening with their relationship further, but it's still worth a try, just because you never know when's your last day on this fantastical world. And I think in the counseling space, I do see often like difficult relationships between like parent and child, especially when, you know, the clients have like really like emotionally immature parents. And I noticed that clients have a difficulty with setting boundaries with those parents or parents in general. Ultimately increases like stress and anxiety when they're around them. But I think the way that I like to work with that with clients is like, again, like reminding them where they are presently, and accepting that you're not that young child anymore. And being able to be an adult, you can enforce boundaries even with your parents. And obviously, those are the most difficult relationships to enforce boundaries with, because if, you know, they've been acting that way their whole lives and things are a certain way, now when things change, you're going to have some type of pushback and some type of like lots of feelings that may be uncomfortable to deal with. But ultimately, if you want to have a happier life and be able to, you know, feel like you can still maintain a relationship, a respectful relationship with your parents, I think that's where boundaries are really important. And telling them how they make you feel, and just being able to speak up for yourself. Because I think, you know, when you're a child, when you're younger, a lot of times you can't really do that, or you didn't know how to, but we're not at that point anymore. So I think that was like a moment that's always really important, especially in the real life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting to see, like, I almost saw Kale doing that boundary setting with his own dad. Like, prior to this moment, his dad tried to be like, I'll give you the letters from your mom if you do this and this. And he was just like,
Yeah.
no, like, I'm not playing your petty game. Absolutely not. And I think in some ways, it's interesting to see, like, Kale's almost dealing with an emotionally immature father, while Gavriel's dealing with an emotionally immature son. And
Right.
so I think it was especially meaningful to Gavriel that Kale was like, I wish I had you as a dad. Like, he's in a place where he's able to say, you know, you are his dad. You are trying really hard to be a part of his life. And there was something really sweet. It almost felt like Kale and Gavriel were fulfilling needs for each other that Kale's dad couldn't fulfill for him, and that Gavriel's son couldn't fulfill for him. It was I think a really unique moment. And I just like that you bring in what ways does boundary setting or creating like interpersonal structures, how does that factor into how we engage with parent-child relationships? Yeah. So they have this moment, but before they move into position in the Farian Gap, Nezrin and Borte fly in and let them know that the Farian Gap is empty for the most part. This is not a good sign, because whoever the hell was in the Farian Gap is now somewhere else. That somewhere else is Orinth. That's no good. We don't want more people at Orinth. And so Alid and Irene are healing a man while Aelin and friends are investigating the gap. They're all like scabbering all over the place and questioning people, whoever's left in the gap. And Irene has an interesting one with Alid where she says, listen, I could heal your ankle if you want. It would be a long process. It would be painful. There'd be a lot to consider, but like, I can do it. And Alid says she'll think about it, but decides that doing that process in the middle of a war is probably not a good idea, to do it after the war is over. I agree. Like, yeah, you don't want to be like unable to move while a war is happening.
Exactly.
So they're doing that. They're connecting, having a moment, and Borte comes to get Alid because they have found Vernon. And this is an interesting connection that they never totally lay out, but they hint at, which is when Dorian took Vernon's form and started asking questions of Erewhon. Erewhon then sends the actual Vernon away to the Cap because he's like, you're asking too many questions. Get out of here. And so he's been set to the Gap because he's made himself a nuisance, i.e. Dorian dressed as him made a nuisance. And Aelin says, we need to go get a lead, and a lead needs to decide what happens here. This is not my decision to make. And so a lead goes to Vernon and faces off with him and tells them, like it basically is going back and forth with Vernon, trying to figure out how she wants to address this. And he's, for his own thing, trying to make sure that he can make himself useful and that they're not going to kill him. So he tells them some information, partially to save his hide. But Alid basically says, get what information you need and kill him quickly. And then she tells Vernon that she's going to forget him, and so won't everyone else after that day. In an attempt to hurt Alid and show that he has valuable information, Vernon informs the crew that Paranth was defeated, and this is devastating to Alid. And she leaves sort of after she said her piece. She's like, all right, fuck this guy. I'm leaving. And Aelin takes over talking to Vernon, and she is a little sneaky with it and goes for nice cop routine. She brings him a beer, and he chugs it. Like, he's like, drinks it down. And she promises him that she won't kill him if he tells them what he knows. And he gives her some troubling information. He tells her that Maeve has joined Erewhon and Morath, that their army of 100,000 Valg marches upon Orinth, and that Erewhon's forces will be in Orinth in about 2 weeks. Or maybe, I think it's a little less than 2 weeks, actually, because I think Aelin's army would get there in 2 weeks. So they're behind Morath's army. And there is no physical way for this army to catch them. And they realize this. They're not going to catch them, and they're not going to get to Orinth in time to save it. And so they are now, there's like a panic that's setting in, because it's like, there's going to be nothing to save because we can't get there in enough time. And Vernon, the smug little like snake that he is, thinks that he's going to get free because he's provided this information. But Aelin, in her classic Aelin style, has pulled a little trickery. She says, I said I wouldn't kill you, and I told you my friends wouldn't kill you. I said nothing about unchaining you. And the full horror of what's about to happen to Vernon sets in, which is they're going to leave him sealed in that mountain to die slowly of thirst and starvation, I assume.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And she even says, like, in a parting comment, she's like, you probably should have saved that beer. You're going to need it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like, I was like, girl, this is bone chilling. I'm into this right now. So they all like strut out of the mountain, and he's like, please wait. And they close him in the mountain, and they're like, peace, good luck. You're not even going to need it where you go. Like, there's just nothing for you except for dying. And after this ordeal, Alid is in her tent. She goes to her tent, and she's with Lorcan after everything, and they share a very sweet connecting moment, and he's checking on her, and they're getting all warm and cozy. And then, in the biggest act of injustice by an author maybe ever, she says, show me everything. And then it ends with, he did. And we never know what that means. We don't get anything.
Any details, nothing.
Pisses me off. And this is a big source of commentary in the social media SJM spaces. Everybody wants this scene. Yeah. Everybody wants this scene. And we just carry on. No, we never know. We never know. And so now that Aleid's sexual goals have been achieved, we check a Rooney on that box, and the Farian goals, Gap goals have been achieved. Bye bye, Vernon. They haul ass to Orinth. And it's one of those things where, like, they don't see a way, but they can't not. They're like, we have to try. There's just no other way but to try. And so they're cutting their way through Oakwald in an attempt to get there as fast as they can. Aelin is burning basically a path through Oakwald and apologizing to the forest every step of the way. She's like, I am so sorry, but I don't have another way to do this. And they stop, interestingly, at Endivere, where it all began, where in Throne of Glass 1, this is where we find Selena Sardothian. And so it's this full circle moment where they end up at Endivere. And Aelin really feels the trauma of that place, and what it caused to her. And the deaths of all the enslaved people who lived there. I forget which book it's in, but there's a book where they, I think it may be the third or fourth one, where they order the deaths of every enslaved person in Endivere and Calaculla. And this is devastating to Aelin. So it is collectively traumatic. It is also individually traumatic. And as they're going on their way into Oakwald and they arrive into Endivere, Rowan has been re-tattooing Aelin, and adding tattoos representing their love to her tattoos. So she's like physically like raw from tattooing. She's emotionally raw. And it is a shock and a death knell for Aelin when Dorian flies into Oakwald, or into Endivere, sort of the edge of Oakwald, Endivere, in the shape of a wyvern, and she knows immediately that he has the 3 keys. She's been dreading and avoiding this moment. And there is a tearful reunion between Dorian and Kale and everyone else. They update each other on what's been happening. But Dorian figures out quickly, Aelin has not figured out another way, that one of them will need to die. And they start debating it. What should they do? Both Dorian and Aelin are arguing that it should be them to seal the gate. And there's a vote. And the majority of the group thinks that they should use the keys now, seal the gate now, instead of waiting for a later date. And this is really demoralizing to Aelin. And there's a vivid moment that I always remember when Aleid turns to Aelin and goes, "What's your vote?" And Aelin goes, "It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't even matter now. You've all voted for my death. And so what does it matter?" And so Rowan, interestingly, has an idea that Dorian and Aelin go in together and do it together so that they each can pay half the price and leave that moment alive. And they agree, and they draw up the word marks in front of Endivere, which is, again, it's like the imagery of like, this all started in Endivere, it's all ending in Endivere. And this is where Dorian and Aelin met. Like, and Kale, Dorian and Aelin and Kale all met here. It like gives me chills a little bit. Yeah. So they cut their palms and they like clasp palms, and their power sort of surges together, which we know is like from the Glass Castle days. We know when they bring their power together, it is like world starting and ending cataclysmic power. And then Aelin cuts open her forearm, puts the keys inside of her forearm, and they melt into her flesh. And they go into a really interesting, weird, new liminal space. And the words that are used is a room that's not a room, where doors to different worlds exist. So she's sort of in this in-between space, and she's seeing these doors to different worlds. And Aelin and Dorian's magic is pouring and pouring into the lock, and it is slowly forging. They're draining and draining and draining, and the lock is forging and forging and forging, but they both feel like they're going to die. And interestingly, Dorian's dad shows up and asks them, "Can I pay the price?" And Aelin's like, "What are you talking about? You pay the price? You don't, like, you can't." And he says, yes, I can. Nameless is my price. And they realize that they do not know the king of Adarlan's name. It is never said, not once. And this was a mind-blowing moment to me. I was like, what? I was like, you're right. No one ever says his name.
Yeah. It was just always the king. It was never.
Yeah. The king of Adarlan. No one ever says his name. And what we learn is that Erewhon had used magic to take it from him in an attempt to dominate him and turn him to his will. So when he says, nameless is my price, he doesn't even know his own name. And so they're shocked by this revelation. But I think there's relief too. It's like, oh, okay, so maybe this can't, like, maybe we don't have to die. But Aelin, again, in a show of self-sacrificing trickery, shoves Dorian back through the gate, back into Aurelia, and grabs on to Dorian's dad's hand. And Dorian realizes that she was never going to let him pay the full price of this. There was never going to be a way that she would let him die. It was like she went along with the plan, but it was always going to be her in her mind. And so Aelin and Dorian's dad forge the lock, and he disintegrates as a result. So he's gone, like cosmically gone. He's not in an afterworld. He's not anywhere. Similar to Elena, he's like gone. And the gods show up in this room that's not a room. All 12 of them, with Elena in tow. And the gods open a gate to their world, and or Aelin opens the gate into the gods' world, and she tries to bargain with them. She says, listen, Aurelia will handle Erewhon, because part of the bargain with the gods was you take Erewhon with you. Mm-hmm. Aelin says, we'll handle Erewhon, but don't destroy Elena's soul. Please let her soul live on. And Deanna, in a show of might and vengeance, disintegrates Elena anyway and says, for your arrogance, like, I don't make deals with like bugs or little inconsequential beings. Now Elena's gone, and you'll deal with Erewhon. So bye. And they go back into their world, and this is devastating for Aelin. Like, now Elena's gone, and they'll have to contend with Erewhon. But Mala Firebringer, who is a descendant, or Aelin is a descendant of Mala Firebringer. Mala Firebringer hangs back and gives her one kernel of power, enough to seal the gates and enough to get her home, because she will die without the kernel of power. And right before she closes the gate to the gods' world, she opens up a portal to a hell realm in their world. And the gods start freaking out. They're like, wait, what? And she's like, bye. And closes the gate. Dude, she's like, oh, you want to fuck with me? I'll fuck with you.
Yeah.
It's crazy. This moment between the gods feels so
I was like, they suck. How are they so godly? They don't do anything.
Yeah. Well, and it begs the question, in my humble opinion, what separates the god? Like, the Valg are creatures from a different world that have inhabited Aurelia for their own reasons. The gods kind of seem similar to me. Mm-hmm. Like maybe not as evil as the Valg, but certainly not totally
helpful,
beneficent. Like, especially Deanna. Like, if you remember in Empire of Storms, Deanna, possesses Aelin, and it's not benevolent. It's not kind. The idea is that she's going to destroy, and she's been waiting for Aelin, and she's going to take over Aelin's body and use it for her own purposes. So Deanna is not kind. You know that she's not like a goddess. You know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Yeah.
So
what separates them from being like Erewhon?
Well, she opened up a hell realm in their perfect little god world, so I think they're about to fucking find out. So now she's in the room of rooms. She has enough power just to get home and seal the gate. but it's tricky. It's not going to be easy. And she feels then that what Rowan tattooed on her back was word marks to call her back to him. He had a thing up his sleeve too, and she was like, Rowan, you sneakity sneak. And all of the in this room of rooms, all of the worlds line up on top of each other, and she has to throw herself through these worlds and stop at Aurelia, because she can miss it. She can miss her world entirely and end up somewhere else. So she falls through all kinds of worlds, ocean worlds, ice worlds, but it's going too fast. She's like, I don't know if I can catch Aurelia. And she falls through one particular world where a Fey male sees her and blasts his power toward her just enough to slow her down a little bit. And that little bit of slowing down helps her to sense Aurelia and Rowan, and she uses her mate bond and pulls at it to bring her back to Aurelia. And in the process of doing all of this, she uses most of her remaining power to get herself back, and she gets back to her body, and Rowan is there holding her. And I felt an immense sense of relief that she made it back alive. But there was great cost to her doing this ordeal. One is her human form, her human life. She is now permanently and wholly Fey, which is a source of grief for her. She liked her human side, and it's gone. And where she had this giant well of endless firepower, she now has a medium amount of firepower. It's not nothing, but it's also like, it's not an endless well. It's like she has a normal amount of fire magic and still a small amount of her mother's water magic. And what's so interesting here is she makes a comment about being relieved that the giant well of power is gone. But I want to stop here because I've seen it debated, and I have my feelings about this, whether Aelin losing the bulk of her power is a good or a bad thing. So I'm wondering, Yarlin, what is your take on her losing her sort of big power and having this sort of like normal amount of power? How do you think these changes will impact Aelin's sense of self? And what advice would you give to folks who experience a sudden or unexpected identity shift?
I mean, I personally didn't like that she lost, the majority of her power, just because it feels like, I mean, at least she didn't die. So maybe that's the plus. I wish she was able to keep her power, and like that be something that helps her rule, Terrasen. But that's the moment where I feel like Dorian could have done more, and I feel like he had like all this power, but then ultimately he would have died. So I don't know, it's kind of complicated, but I wasn't too happy that she lost her power. But I can see that maybe it can be less of a temptation to like use it for not great things. I think there's definitely going to be a shift in like how she sees herself and what the power means to her and her as her identity. So I think with like in the real space, when people have an experience like that where they have a sudden identity shift, I think processing like what that change means to them, and again, there may be a part of like that grief of grieving their past self or their past abilities, and then kind of seeing what they want their new version or identity of themselves, what they want that to look like. So I think it's just a lot of processing of those emotions, and being able to work on the confidence and your self-esteem, and knowing that those past things didn't define who you are, and you can always make a different version of yourself and like kind of see yourself as the best version of yourself. So that's kind of what I would say. But at least with like Aelin, I didn't want her to lose her power, but I can see how it's like not that bad because she's still alive.
Yeah, I think so. On sort of the clinical and the story level, clinically, I love that you highlight like that we can remake meaning. Like if you lose a part of your identity or you lose an identity for whatever reason, that it just because this part of you is not a part of your life anymore, it doesn't mean that you cease being you. Like there are other parts of you that you can draw on no matter what circumstances you're in. And I think about like folks who you know are not maybe born with a disability who acquire a disability. A huge percent of the population is going to acquire a disability at some point in their lifetime. And so recognizing that when you have a significant shift in how you approach the world, your day-to-day functioning, things like that, it can be really jarring, and it doesn't mean that you've lost you. That it just means it's a new, as you said, a new version of you. And we can draw on the things we already have within ourselves. As far as Aelin goes, I'm of two minds because I generally don't like the trope where like the woman in the story has to lose all her power and everybody else gets to keep their power to save the world. I don't like that. And I think what's really telling is that Aelin talks about how relieved she is not to have it. If it's something that she wants to live without, to me, I'm like, okay, if you are sick of carrying this around and you prefer not to have it, I can get on board with that because that's your life and your thing. And in Dorian's defense, I think, one, she shoves him out. Like, she doesn't even give him the choice.
Yeah.
And
she does do that.
It does shorten his well of power. He talks about, like, I can find the bottom of my power now, and I couldn't previously. So I don't like that they don't kind of equally give away power. There's something about that twinges. Yeah. And I can also see her point of like, she has been through so much. And I think especially through the part, like after they rescue her, even like weeks later, like she's functioning, she's doing all right, but she keeps going to Rowan and saying, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. And I don't want to do this anymore. And I don't want to give anymore. And so in some way, I feel like this relinquishing of this like God tier power helps her to be like, now I get to be me and I get to like have things that are mine rather than like have to give away parts of myself until like, who am I? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like everyone looking to her for like saving the day, like she doesn't have to take on that role anymore. So I can see how there's a positive there. I think initially like the feminism of us is just like, I don't like that she had to lose all her powers and like everyone else is fine, but she is a very self-sacrificing character throughout the whole series. So I think that kind of like tracks for her.
Yeah. I had the same knee jerk. I was like, how like the woman has to be the one to lose the power. But
yeah.
And I can see why she's like, oh, thank God. So, they come out of the forging of the lock, and it's so interesting because Rowan is sort of her witness to this. Kale is Dorian's witness, so they like embrace, their people. And when Aelin gets back to camp, and I think this was a real sign of character growth for Aelin, she tells them the full story. Like usually she holds back and she like for her own purposes. She just goes and tells them the full thing. She's like, this is what happened, start to finish, everything. Here's what it is. And some people are pissed that she tried to bargain with the gods and she lost the ability to take Erewhon away. Others are more supportive and are just grateful that she forged the lock. And I'm with those people. Like, all the people who want to be pissed, why don't you try to carry God power around for fucking your whole life? And then why don't you go into the room of rooms and face off against all the gods in the Valg? And then you can tell me how you would want to handle it. I felt very protective of Aelin in that moment. So they're now all like, lock is forged. They're like, okay, we got to get to Orinth. Even though Aelin doesn't have her full power anymore, she can't really do much of shit against Erewhon and Maeve now. But it doesn't stop her. She's like, I'm going there. I'm going to do whatever I can. A snowstorm of all things, shows up, and it stops the army in their tracks. And they know that they won't get to Orinth in time, but they can't. Like, they want to move, they want to keep going, but the snow is too bad. And they're not hopeful. They're like, I don't see a way out of this. I don't know how to do this. But who should roll up but the Lord of the North, a white stag with a blazing crown in between his antlers. And the little folk and the Lord of the North, they're like, we will lead you to Orinth through a secret path that only we know. And saddle up, everybody. So they do. They day and night are trudging. They are going as fast as they fucking can to Orinth. And when they roll up to Orinth, it's bad. Orinth is getting its butt kicked. There are just too many in Erewhon's host. It doesn't matter how smart they are. It doesn't matter how savvy they are, how vicious they are. There's just too many. There's too many. So, and Aelin and friends are like, let's get them, boys. And they just charge into the fray. And this kicks off all of these sort of tumbling events that lead to the end of the book. The first that I want to highlight is that Gavriel dies defending the Western Gate to keep Orinth and his son safe. And Aedion, you can tell, was on the cusp of working with his dad, of not being an insufferable guy. And he thought that him and Gavriel were going to defend the gate together. But Gavriel sort of jumps through the gate and says, close the gate. And all the soldiers rush forward and slam the gate at Gavriel's back. And he holds the Western Gate. And this is devastating for Aedion. In a classic show of far too little, far too late, Aedion is now upset that his dad is dead. Well, instead of talking to him while he was alive.
Yeah. Yeah, wrong timing, you know?
That seems to be Aedion's favorite method. Just the worst timing on everything. You realize too late that you should have been less of an asshole. Anyway, I'm not going to get into it, but I could. So all of this is bad, but it manages to get worse when Maeve and Erewhon roll up. And what they don't know is that Aelin doesn't have her god power anymore. She has a normal amount of firepower, but she doesn't have Mala Firebringer's giant ass power anymore. And so Aelin goes out to meet them, and she's using some of that like assassin swagger. She's like, I'm going to distract them and pretend as long as I can that I'm at full power, just to buy people time to escape, and in hopes, fingies crossed, that Irene comes up with a plan to take out Erewhon, because she has the healing magic. She is the one who can eradicate Erewhon. She's like the only one, maybe. So Aelin shit talks, and she's sowing doubt for Erewhon about Maeve's allegiances. She's like putting on a song and dance. She's like, hello, my darling. Hello, my baby. And like behind her, all of the Orinthian people and Irene, she's like, come on, folks, get out here. Like, get away.
Oh my goodness.
And so they're going back and forth verbally. And Maeve catches on quicker than Erewhon does that she's trying to do something. But then she engages them in combat, and she's trying to hide that she doesn't have much power. She's pretending like she's making it a show, but like she's giving everything she's got. And to the credit of Irene, Aleid's actually the one that comes up with the idea. Lysandra and Dorian come up with a plan to take out Erewhon, and they draw him to a tower. They basically, Lysandra shifts into wyvern form, flies past where Aelin and Erewhon and Maeve are fighting, and Dorian, looking like Irene, is on the back of Lysandra going, come and get me, boys, and then flies away to a tower, drops off Dorian dressed as Irene. Erewhon comes to the tower like an idiot, is like, haha, I've got you now, little girl. And then from behind him, Aleid comes up and swords him. And then Dorian changes into Dorian. Irene pops out, and they all descend upon him. And they subdue him. And then Irene blasts him apart. And I think it's important to note that her power is the power of healing, but ultimately it's the ability to make and unmake. And so she unmakes him, and they vanquish him. And all he is now is a little dark spot on the cobblestones at the top of this tower. And we all go, yay! But there's one last problem, and that's Maeve. Maeve and Aelin battle it out, and Maeve sends her a vision of her still being held captive. This was stressful. I don't know about you, but I'm like, I thought it was curtains for a second.
Yeah, I literally was like, no way. Was this all a dream? Was she still? Yeah, I was very confused for a minute. I was like, oh my God, what is happening?
I had the same reaction first time I read it. I was like, you better not pull a "this was all a dream" thing. I will rip this book to shreds.
Burn the world down.
I will the whole thing.
Yeah.
So this is traumatizing to Aelin, obviously, but she manages to break the vision. And then they're all fighting. Rowan, Lorcan, and Fenris come to her aid, but they all get ensnared in Maeve's dark visions as well. And they're sort of sitting there in their own personal versions of hell. And they eventually break out of it, and they come at Maeve with all they've got. So like Lorcan and Rowan and Aelin, they're all just sort of like overwhelming Maeve. And Fenris uses his teleporting power and has Goldrin in his hand and shoves the sword through her chest. And this is the first moment where you see the tides turning. She has the sword through her, and it's incredibly painful because it's imbued with magic that is designed to destroy her as a Valg specifically. Mm-hmm. Then Aelin takes the ring of Athril, puts it on her finger, and that's also imbued with magic that's supposed to destroy her. And this really weakens her to a point where Aelin could walk up and behead her. Ooh. And later, Maeve, we won't miss you. Bye. And as soon as Maeve dies, her army dies with her. It's like they all just collapse and turn to dust, because without her at the helm, they all go. And Aelin burns her to ashes. Like, they're terrified that she's going to somehow reconstitute herself. So like, she's like, magically, I'm going to burn her to 1,000 million microscopic little ash pieces. And then her and Rowan and Lorcan and Fenris stand outside for, I think it's the whole night, to make sure that she doesn't come back. Yeah. They're like, we are not turning our backs on this shit until we know that it's done. And you know what? It is done. Morath's legions, gone. Maeve and Erewhon, vanquished. Aurelia, safe. And they save the world. And from there, it really is just about people coming together, mourning who's died, celebrating together, and they all go to rule their various lands. So Aelin and her court stay in Orinth to rule Terrasen. Dorian and his crew go back to Adarlan. Manon and the witches go to the Witch Kingdom with Ansel of Briarcliff, who's got a spot in the Wastes. Nezrin and Sartak and the crew go to the Southern Continent to rule. Even Elide and Lorcan, they go to Peranth to lord over there. And it's really bittersweet. It's this thing where everybody's trying to figure out how to grieve and to build a new world, but there's a lot of hope. And what sort of how the book ends, the last scene of the book is between Aelin and Rowan, and they look out, and this fire flower, which had only bloomed for Brannon, it was a blessing from the land of the return of Galathinius to the land. They look out upon the fields, and the fire flower blooms as a blessing from Terrasen to Aelin, and a sign of Aelin being welcomed home. And the book ends. Wow. And it's very sweet, and it's the culmination of a very long journey.
A tumultuous journey.
So I'm curious, after all it was said and done, what were your thoughts about the ending? What were your sort of like final sentiments?
Well, I do think that, ultimately all the evil being vanquished and everyone having their part in how that happened, I was happy with the overall ending of course, like everyone being able to go back, rule their own lands, and, obviously Aelin finally being able to be back home and not in suffering. So I am happy about that. Like we mentioned, I do feel like I wanted kind of like more from like Manon's POV and just like more of seeing like where that goes for her. I kind of wanted her and Dorian to kind of like get together, and that doesn't really happen. They kind of
the door is left ajar for them to get into it, but they don't solidify it.
And they're going to be in two different like areas. Like I don't think that that's going to happen, so I do wish there was more with that. I think overall great story, great way and show of teamwork. And that how hope was so important throughout this whole journey for them. So I do love that.
Yeah. It's an ending to a really rich world. A lot happens. It's just, I think it's a really, I think overall Sarah J. Maas does a nice job of wrapping a bunch of different timelines. And I could always see more.
Yeah. There was definitely a lot of loss. So that was like a big thing.
Which, I mean, it feels realistic, right? Like even the fact that the major players, like the very most major players, all of them made it out alive. That's incredible. That's true. Like, I think in some ways it's like she towed a line between, okay, some people really have to die in this war. It has to cost something. And she didn't kill off anybody who I thought would be like, it would end my feeling, like my love of the book in some way.
Yeah. I think there was a good amount of main characters that I would say a lot of people love, where having them die was just not a good look. So I think, whoever died was purposeful and was needed for, the real loss of death and the loss of like in war and stuff. But the main peeps came out alive.
Main peeps made it, and that we can be thankful for. So that is a wrap on our plots and thoughts journey through Throne of Glass. And now we have to get into our Teehee moments and our therapy deep dive. And before we do that, it might be a good time for a break. And when we come back, we will get into the next segments of our episode. See you then.
Right.
Bye.
Bye. All right, we are back, and now we're going to get into our Teehee moments.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Yes, so I can go ahead and say my couple that I have. So in page 660, this is between Dorian and Maeve. The king I wish to be is the opposite of what you are. He gave Maeve a smile, and there is only one witch who will be my queen. Obviously, he's talking about Manon. I loved that so much, and I'm like rooting for them. So that's why I'm so disappointed that like they didn't really get a together moment. Like
I like to think in my mind, in my head canon, they absolutely do. Like I think I've just convinced myself.
They visit each other. They make it work.
I honestly think in my head they get married. Like, or whatever counts for, they have a union of some kind, or maybe they're mates. I don't know, but I just refuse to accept that they don't end up together. So I just, only one witch will be his queen.
Love that.
That's forever.
So I love that one. And then in page 773, this is between Rowan and Aelin. No farewells, princess, Rowan asked as she graced the mark with her foot. They seemed dramatic, far too dramatic even for me. But Rowan halted her, the second symbol half finished. Tipped back her chin. Even when you're there, I am with you. He laid a hand on her heart. Here, I am with you here. She laid her own hand on his chest and breathed in his scent deep into her lungs. Her heart, as I am with you always. I love you. Come back to me. I thought that was really cute. Really cute moment.
I had that in my teehees as well. Just like they're claiming their bond to each other.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
And then the last one is page 843 between Aedion and Lysandra. So Aedion leaned in and kissed Lysandra, kissed the woman who should have been his wife, his mate, one last time. I love you. Sorrow filled her beautiful face, and I you. Until the end, I will find you again in whatever life comes after this. Lysandra nodded. In every lifetime. I loved that one. Even though we don't like him, I thought that was a cute moment.
If I pretend like it's not Aedion, it is a very sweet. Like, I will find you in every lifetime. Whatever comes after this.
I would sure hope so.
Oh, if you're not finding me in every lifetime, there are problems. What are we even doing at that point?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Precisely and exactly. So
those were
I
mine.
have yeah. I think that's an excellent crop. Like I said, I think we shared the one with the hand on the heart, and
yes.
So I think I'll have to, because I have a few more. I think I highlighted 3 that I was going to share. So luckily I didn't highlight that one. So part of when I pulled these quotes, part of them I pulled from my Goodreads, which reported the part of the book in percentage, not in page number. So this first one is based on percentage, 74% the way through the book. And I tried to find the page number and I couldn't. So I was like, all right, well, it's 74%. And this is between Lorcan and a lead. And it says, Lorcan trembled with restraint, with emotion she didn't know. That darling purr of his rumbled into her as she pressed her mouth against his pectoral. His hand drifted to her hair, each stroke unbinding her braid. We only go as far and as long as you want, he said. Yet she dared to glance down at his body, to what strained under his pants.
All right.
Oh, okay. And then I left out the part where this ends in the fade to black. Like, we had a foundation here. We were going somewhere. And so I left that part off because I want to pretend in my head that this was going somewhere. But I just love the idea of like him trembling with restraint and emotion. If you're not trembling with restraint and emotion,
then I don't want it.
And I don't want then get out of here with that. Get out of here if you're not going to be trembling with restraint and emotion.
If you're just okay, you're just standing there. No, that's not enough. You need to be
You're
trembling.
too nonchalant. I don't need nonchalance. Be chalant. I want you to be chalant to the max. So yeah, I like that a lot. And then, okay, this next one is like girl power, highly emotional. This isn't, I don't even know if I could count it as a teehee, but I'm doing it because it just got me so hard in my heart that I was just like, I can't not mention it.
Yeah, this was a good part.
Oh my God. So page 964, everything, like the battle has ended and they are standing, I think, in front of the gates or something. And Aelin is standing there with everybody who has helped. Like all of them are standing together who have done this battle and won. And it says, and when they balked, Aelin walked forward, took Irene Westfall by the hand to guide her to the front. Then Manon Blackbeak, Alid Lockin, Lysandra, Evangeline, Nezrin Falik, Borte, and Hussar, and Ansel of Briarcliff. All the women who had fought by her side or from afar, who had bled and sacrificed and never given up hope that this day might come.
That one kind of got me. It kind of got me a little bit down.
Oh, I cried yesterday as I'm typing it. I'm like in a coffee shop typing this out, and I'm crying as I'm doing it. Like it
Yeah,
was
I'm a little watery. Whew.
oh,
That
that one
one
got
was
me.
really powerful.
So I don't know if we could say he, but like the power of sisterhood and like coming together
Yes.
as women, that just that did something for me.
Hmm.
And then at the last, and this might be one of the last, I think it may be even the last thing that's said. I don't know. But on page 977, this is between Rowan and Aelin. And she says, "To whatever end," she breathed. Rowan followed her as he had his entire life, long before they had ever met, before their souls had sparked into existence. To whatever end, Fireheart.
Iconic quote.
If you're not following me before your soul sparks into existence, what are we doing? Like, you should know about me before you're even even thought about as an entity of a person.
Yeah.
So that got me. That got me hard.
Those were some good ones.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. It wasn't as spicy as we might have liked, but it did deliver in the emotion department. So you take you take what you can get.
Yeah. Well, now we will get into our therapy deep dive. So here we'll kind of like round up like some of these main characters and kind of what we saw in this second half. So with Aelin, after her torture by Maeve and loss of nearly all of her firepower in forging the lock, Aelin undergoes a profound like ego death, if you want to call it. So now it's like kind of like figuring out like who she is without her magic and what things were going to look like. So some key psychological themes: identity collapse. So her entire self-concept was built on being powerful, defiant, and the fire bringer. So when her magic is mostly gone, she's forced to confront the terrifying question of like, who am I without my power? I think she won't have a hard time like figuring and like seeing what life will be about because she'll be with her mate and like life will still have meaning aside from the power. Um, there was a shift from being a martyr complex to interdependence. So in the earlier books show that Aelin like carrying burdens alone and manipulating outcomes in isolation, like that's a lot to carry on your shoulders. But in the second half, she finally allows others to fight beside her without pre-planning every move, with being able to be vulnerable and let people in and accept help. Like a lot of people do struggle with asking for help, and we do see that she struggled with that. Humanization of the myth. So Aelin transitions from a mythic symbol to a mortal queen. So she chooses to rule not as a godlike savior, but as a flawed, scarred survivor. So I think even with having to visit the place where everything started, like that brought a lot of like memories, and that can be really difficult. But I think we saw a lot of in her character arc and where she started to where she ended. So
yeah, I really appreciated. I really thought Sarah J. Maas towed the line with Aelin being willing to be honest with people. Like, if you meet her top of Throne of Glass, she's not telling anything to anybody. Like, and even with and including the reader, like even when she's like honest with people, it's only in certain measures. And then as you get further and further along, people give her this feedback and she tells them more. She's working on it. She's like, okay, I'm trying, but she never totally discloses everything. And then by
yeah.
the end of Kingdom of Ash, and it's so funny because Rowan even makes a comment. He's like, "Are you going to let me in on this scheme?" And she's like, "I think it's about time I let folks in on the things I'm doing." So it really, she holds that arc across 8 books, and it really, she arrives at the I'm going to let people in so that we can all do this together kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of like a trauma response for survival. It's like not being able to fully be vulnerable and having to figure things out all on your own. Like, you know, we can see that even in real life too, where it can be difficult to really rely on others if you, again, have always been let down and things are always, self-reliant, and you have to be super independent. Like a hyper independence is not a
Mm-hmm.
good thing either. So those are kind of like seen as like trauma responses. So
Yeah.
with that is with her. Um, and now with Rowan, so he begins a series emotionally deadened by grief. And then by the second half of Kingdom of Ash, his arc culminates in a balanced devotion. So um, he has a healthy attachment. We see that throughout their whole relationship, he loves Aelin fiercely, but no longer out of like codependence or a need for redemption. Like he's just solely there to support her and really just be with his mate and love her. So he was a gray green flag throughout kind of the whole series. He shifts from being a protector to an equal with her, so more like partners instead of him having to be kind of like the warrior. But they are in war throughout most of the series. So and then he has a lot of controlled rage. So his brutality becomes purposeful rather than grief driven. And I think that's, your values are really important in like when you choose to end a life. So versus just like lashing out and kind of doing all of that. So I thought that was pretty big for him. I mean, he was already pretty good as a character. He didn't have a lot of like crazy things that changed. So I think that was good for him.
Well, and I think too, he gets opportunities to talk to Aelin throughout Kingdom of Ash, especially after they save her. Like they have a couple of hard conversations where he goes, I really wish you had told me, like, I wish you could have come to me and told me that we were mates. Like, and he says, like, I recognize that I let stuff with Lyria hold me back a lot. And he reaffirms, like, you are my mate and I'm into this. And his arc, I think, was really around, like, as you said, turning sort of these instincts that he has for things like protectiveness, for things like devotion and loyalty. And now he gets to do healthful and helpful things with those instincts. And he gives himself over to it. Where in the previous books, he was really holding on to the guilt around Lyria.
Yeah.
By the time he has these conversations in Kingdom of Ash, he's going, you are my mate. And just because Maeve messed with my mind does not, like, I'm ready and I want to be your mate. And I wish I had known before, you were taken away from me that was the case.
Yeah. He just needs some time to process that change. So that was with him. And then with Manon, so her second half arc is one of the generational trauma rupture. So we know that she was raised in brutality, conditioned for emotional suppression. She was able to reject her grandmother's ideology. She accepts love and grief for the 13. And she chooses leadership built on protection rather than cruelty. So I think the sacrifice of the 13 is psychologically devastating but transformative. It solidifies Manon's break from her inherited system of violence. And I think that shows an utmost devotion and love for them as a whole and like their sisterhood, where, I feel like if it was seen in a more cruel environment and out of obedience, it wouldn't have meant, like, their lives wouldn't have meant anything of losing that. But we see that she was able to then restore all of, the thing, break the curse, and hopefully rule. We wouldn't know, but hopefully rule. And
you're like, we don't know anything about that, Sarah.
No.
But yeah.
So yeah, but I think Manon's character arc was the most like just so beautiful to see.
Well, and in some ways, I think the grief she feels about the 13 at the end is a sign of growth. It's like, this is not pleasant, and it's not, it's highly painful. And I say this to clients sometimes, like, I would be more concerned if you weren't in in pain over this. Like,
Exactly.
it would be more concerning to me if you felt nothing about this thing that has happened. And it's a sign of her growth that she feels so deeply. She's now has the capacity to do so.
Yeah. So I think that in itself is a shift in its own. So I loved her character and like her psychoanalysis. And then we have Dorian. So his journey culminates in self-acceptance. Earlier, his power frightened him. He disassociated from it. He did go through a lot of things with his collar and having his power, kind of manipulated. And then in the second half of the book, we see that he fully inhabits his raw magic. He embraces his strategic cruelty when necessary. He rules without naivety. He's able to, like, I think him being able to, like, transform and be able to change was awesome. I do think he could have done more with, like, saving, but it is what it is. Aelin kind of put him in that position to not really fork over more things, but he did lose some power. But with his character arc, he did not choose light over dark. He was able to synthesize both of them and just fully be able to accept his power versus being afraid of it. So I thought his arc was pretty cool too.
Agreed. I like that you talk about the synthesis of the light and the dark, because that truly is Dorian's, like, he fully finds a way to accept himself and be like, yeah, there is a darkness inside of me. Like, that is a part of me. And I even, like, there's like this is not the counselor side of me. This is the reader side of me. But like, we love a man who's like got a little like darkness. Like, yes. Yeah, he's like, guess what? I'm holding at bay the darkness inside me every single day that I wake up, and I'm like, oh, okay,
let it out just a little bit,
just a little bit, bit in strategic moments. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But he really stops feeling like, okay, I'm this monster that's walking around in a human skin, and he goes, there's something monstrous that sort of is within me, and I get to choose whether I feed it or not. I get to decide what kind of king I want to be, and I'm not beholden to this darkness. I live with it, but it does not make me or
it does not it doesn't control him. He is in control of his power, and I think that's a key difference in, like, honestly being good or evil, is like you being able to be in control of all of that.
Absolutely. So
that is it.
We have been on a mighty journey with these characters, and that means, and there's no more future thoughts and theories, because here we are. And it is time for final remarks and shout outs and a little sneak peek of what you can expect from Fae and Fables going forward.
Yes.
First and foremost, if any of today's topics were triggering or upsetting, please make sure to seek out individualized mental health treatment. And remember, this podcast is for fun. It's based on our opinions and experiences and should not be used for diagnosing, assessing, or treating mental health conditions. Our next episode, out on March 11th, will cover A Court of Thorns and Roses. On to the next series. And we've gotten feedback from folks about wanting even more psych content in our episodes. And so with A Court of Thorns and Roses, we will be moving into a new era for Fae and Fables and trying out some new things. And we have a structure for the way we want to try those new things, but also let us know what really works for you, what you want to hear more about. If you have questions for us, we are clinicians out in the real working world. So I think there's a lot of knowledge that can come from that. But in the vein of new things and of giving you more of that psych content that everybody's asking for, we have a bit of a new format. And I'm going to go over what those sections are going to look like for our future episodes. Some things are staying It's just that we're incorporating new fun stuff. I'm excited. I cannot wait to psych nerd out with you and to banter and all that good stuff. So we're keeping our star ratings and our chili pepper ratings. We're going to be adding a little element of shelf placement. Where on our shelf would this book go? We're keeping our tee-hee moments because we can't.
Of course.
We can't live with that. We can't. We need to let you know when we're tee-heeing. We can't let that go. And we have a few new little items that we're adding. One is going to be our character case, where Yarlin and I will each pick a character and we will analyze them as if they were our clients. What kinds of things would we work on with these characters? What would be on their treatment plans? We could get so technical with it if we so chose. Then we're going to have what we're calling the red flag court. And this court is staffed by highly qualified licensed professionals who are going to decide, is this a red flag behavior or a green flag behavior, and why? And so we're going to have a little banter back and forth with that. We're going to do what we like to call a psych mismatch. Sometimes when we read books, the psychology of the characters doesn't really match up to what they're doing or how they're acting. So if we see any of that, we'll point that in your direction as well. And then we're going to have what we're calling, for now, this is a working title, the Counselor's Couch, where we give you some insights on how you can take what's happening into the books out into the real world. And we also want to give you the opportunity to connect with us as readers. So we're going to let you know what we're reading, kind of what's on our minds as readers, even as we're analyzing these books. So these are all new things. We're really excited to share them with you. And if you have any feedback or title help, we're like, if you could think of a good title for one of these segments, you let us know. We're not above a good piece of feedback. And we look forward to sharing that with you all in this upcoming episode and for the duration of the ACOTAR series.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Me too. I can't. The banter. I'm already like, we've both already read ACOTAR, so like, I'm already thinking like, what's red flag, what's green flag. We're gonna be out here. We're gonna be delivering. We're gonna be serving. We're gonna be sipping the tea. Yes. It's all coming together.
Yes.
If you'd like to support us or interact with us, please make sure to subscribe and rate the podcast on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram at FayandFablesPod or email us at fayandfablespod@gmail.com. And we have merch. Go to our link tree in our Instagram to find our Etsy page. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you soon for A Court of Thorns and Roses.
All right. Bye.